Hello and welcome to my guide to Final Fantasy XIV ACT Cactbot, or as some people call it, the Raidboss mod. What it does is, if you've ever played World of Warcraft, it is very similar to the Deadly Boss mods. At least I think that's what it's called. What it does is that you can program it to call out specific things that are happening. The boss is doing some kind of mechanic, you can call it out on your screen and therefore react to it very quickly. This guide already assumes that your ACT is set up properly and that it's working already. So keep that in mind. This guide will not explain how to get ACT to work. So first, in order to look up if you're even interested in this thing, what you need to do is you need to go to Google and type in Final Fantasy XIV Cactbot. So the first thing that will appear is this GitHub link right here, the first one. If you click on it, this is the GitHub page of Cactbot. If you've never seen GitHub before, it's a platform that allows developers and programmers to very easily share their code and to track issues and release new versions of it. So if you scroll down here, it will explain what Cactbot is, what it looks like, what it can do. So for example, you can install these visual guides if you want to. You can show up this text here on the middle of the screen. You have these timelines. What I will explain today is how to install and use and customize these triggers here, the text triggers. These are the most important ones, the ones that say this mechanic has happened and play a sound. For example, trick tag has been used with a sound behind it. That's what most people want from it in the first place. So this is what I'm going to explain today. The first thing is how to install Cactbot. Second is how to use it. Third is how to customize it. So here we go. You want this plugin. So what you do is you scroll up here and then you go to releases. It's this tab right here. This is the Cactbot. It will probably appear like this at first. You need to pop this up and then download this Cactbot zip, the upper one, not the middle one, not the down one, the upper one. That's the important one. You download it, and once you've downloaded it, it will look something like this. So the first thing you need to do is you need to right click it, go to properties at the very bottom, and then you have to enable it. It's this tick mark right here. You have to enable it so Windows doesn't block any of the files inside. You need to accept and click OK. So now they are no longer blocked by Windows. So what you do next is you open it up, you open that one up, and the only thing in here you're interested in is this folder right here. This one. And since your ACT is already working, you already have an overlay plugin. This thing, you already have that. You needed that in order to install a overlay for your parser in-game. You already have this folder. So what you need to do is you need to take this folder, you need to copy it, and then you need to go to your desktop. For me it's desktop, your advanced combat tracker folder, this one, and in here you have this overlay plugin folder as well. So what you need to do, you need to right click here and paste, and what it will do, it will insert everything that's inside the zip folder into here, and in here it will input all the new stuff, all that makes Cactbot what it is. So once you have inserted it into here, what you can do now is you can start ACT. Yep, you can start ACT, which will then look something like this. So the first thing you do in order to enable the plugin is you go into the plugins tab, and there, instead of adding a Cactbot like all the usual plugins. Instead, it is only a modification to an existing plugin. It is a modification to the overlay plugin, which is why the Cactbot was inserted into the overlay plugin folder. So what you do is you go into the overlay plugin.dll here, then you will press here on new. You type in the name, probably you want to call it Cactbot or something. And then the type, and this is important, the type is now, you can set it to Cactbot. This is new, this didn't exist before. You can set it to Cactbot and press OK. What you need to do now is, in this tab, the URL tab, you need to search. And what you do is you go into your overlay plugin folder, this one, and then you go into resources. No, never mind, not resources. Cactbot, right. You go into the Cactbot folder, then you go into the UI folder, and here are all the different plugins you just downloaded, but the only one you're really interested in is the Raidboss. That's the one we want. So you go into Raidboss, and here you have two options, but the one we are interested in is the raidboss.html. This is what contains all the code. So we press open, and look what appears. Hello. So this is just a temporary picture that exists in order to tell us what it would look like. It's just an info text. So what we can do is we can first make it bigger, so the timelines and the text doesn't overlap. So this is what it would roughly look like. Then you choose a good place for it. You can change the place at any point, but it's better if you do it now. For example, the middle of your screen is just fine. And now what you do, we lock the overlay. It's this option here. And what it does is it removes the ability for us to move it around, and it will make it invisible until it actually does something in game. You lock it and it disappears. And if you want to move it around again, you just unlock it, and there it is. So it's locked now. So now you have installed Cactbot. So already you can go in game and try it out. So Cactbot has one mode to test it. Has a modus operandi in order to test it outside of a battle. So I will remove this because I don't actually need it. I have this plugin already up there. So it would look something like this for you also. So what you do is you go in game, then you go to the Summerford Farms right here, and don't forget to make sure that your ACT is actually working on this client. So when I press /e end, it makes a sound, and that means that ACT is listening to this client right here. So what I can do now is I can click on this dummy here, and then I can press /bow, and suddenly all these test things appear. And it's basically acting as if you're in combat, and it is made to test what ACT would look like for you. And these are the sounds and the text that the creator inserted in order for you to be able to test it. And then you can do some things like /poke in order to create info texts. Then you can /psych. This creates info texts. There it is. No, not info text. They are called alert text. Yeah, these are alert texts. And then there is laugh. This one, that is the alarm texts. Okay, so the combat is now over. So if I bow again, no, never mind. I have to reset it. I have to /goodbye. Now the combat is over. Now I /bow in order to restart it. There we go. And now I can laugh at it in order to make more alert texts. Come on. Guess I can only do it once. No, I can only do it once every couple seconds. Okay, that explains it. And this is how you test that it works. So now that I've ascertained that it works, and you're saying, yeah, cool, what you can do now is you can press /goodbye in order to stop this. Actually, do you need to do it to the dummy? Yeah, you need to do it to the while marking the dummy. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go to my Advanced Combat Tracker folder. And now that I'm in the folder, I go to the overlay plugin, I go to Cactbot, I go to UI, I go to Raidboss. So this is this Raidboss plugin that we've just tested. And the files we are interested in are inside of data and inside of triggers. So this is all the text and the sound is inside of here. At least the scripts that use them. So every single file that you've seen here is a raid encounter that Cactbot has triggers for. For example, Alexander 1 Savage has this file in here, and so on and so on. Rathalos EX, Ravana EX, Suzaku EX, and whatever else. The tiers, this is the Aram Reborn raid, Coil of Bahamut. Then we have Omega Savage right here. Anyone you want. And so this means that if all you wanted to do was to install Cactbot and check if it works, then you're done. You have now completed everything you set out to do, and you can basically close this guide now, because everything that's happening from now on is me going into how to customize and make your own triggers. For example, the raid boss encounters have all the mechanics that happen in boss fights, but what they usually don't have is callouts. For example, for trick attack happening, or for battle litany happening, or for technical finish happening. So if you want triggers that don't exist yet, like your Savage raids released today, you want to make your own triggers before this person releases the official version, then you can do it with what I'm going to explain to you next. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The first thing that would interest you is that in this folder here, there exists a file called README. There it is. And this file teaches you how to make your own triggers. And this is how I learned. So you can open it. This is what it looks like. And this is also how I learned how to make triggers. What I'm going to do is to make it as simple as I possibly can, so you don't have to read through all of this. So, first thing, we need a template for a trigger. We want something so we don't have to paste copy paste the so we don't have to write down the stuff that every single file needs. We don't need that. So all we do is we choose any of these files. It doesn't matter which one. We choose, like, for example, SerioX, because it's the first one I clicked on. Right click it, and then we press on edit with notepad. There it is. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select everything, copy everything, close it. And then I'm gonna create a new file in here that looks exactly like the others. So I'm gonna create a new file and call it, for example, test_video guide. Sure, why not? Dot, and this is important, .gs. Enter. Yes. So this is what it looks like now. So I'm gonna right click it and then edit it with notepad. So it's a completely empty file. Now I paste everything we copied over, and we'll have a glorious mess of all these options, right? Most of these are unimportant for us right now. So what we are gonna do is we're gonna take it and remove most of it. So we're gonna just take this and remove most of it except for a single trigger, the one we want to use as a template. So let's see, does it look fine? Probably need to remove one more, is that correct? This closes this. Is that correct? I'm just being blind. Unfortunately, I will have to open it in Notepad. It's a program you probably won't have, but it helps a lot. Notepad++. So if I copy paste it into here, I can check, aha, this bracket closes this bracket closes this bracket closes this, and this closes that. Yeah, okay, so I copied it correctly. That's all I wanted to see. So, first thing we want to do when we are creating a new file is decide in what area does this file work in. For example, I want this area to only work in Omega-1 Savage, right? Or I want to only work for it to only work in Summerford Farms. That's where we are right now with our character. Or I want to only make it work in Seriu, like this one is. So what you're interested in is finding out what the area name is. And you can see the area name if you go into ACT, like here, into main. And then when you are in combat, what it will do, it will create a new overlay like this. And in here it will say middle La Nosea, this thing. And this is the area you are in. So you'll need to make sure that the regular expression can see this, can match it and say, okay, this is where we are. I'm activated now. I'm listening. So in this case, what I'm gonna do is say, okay, I want the regex to see that we are in middle. It has to be, it is case sensitive, so you need to have all the big letters be big and all the small letters be small. It does matter. So middle La Nosea. I hope I wrote it correctly, did I? Middle La Nosea. Okay. So this is the zone regex. This is the line that checks if this entire file is activated or not, simply based off where you are. So for example, if you're in Omega-1 Savage, then all the other code for Alexander, for Coil of Bahamut is deactivated. So it doesn't take up processing power. Only this one code will be activated. And if you want your file to always be activated, not just in a specific area, you just leave it empty. So instead of writing middle La Nosea, you can just remove this and leave it empty, like this. If you leave it empty, it is activated at all times, always. So timelines, I'm not going to explain how to properly install those, mainly because I myself don't understand how to make time files. I've looked into it and it is super confusing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna remove this line. So we're interested in what's happening here, right? I'm a bit confused. I need to look at Notepad for a second. Ah, I see, that was the problem. Okay. So this is what it should look like. So you remove that text as well. It just says triggers. Okay, so inside of this bracket here are all the triggers you want. So for example, this is one trigger. And if you want more than one, you just copy paste it over and over again. Right? This is one trigger. And every trigger contains a couple lines. For example, it always contains ID at the first step. So I want a trigger called, what should I call it? technical step trigger. I will now create a trigger for the dancer buff called technical step. So that's the first line. The ID is only the name of the trigger itself. It has no impact whatsoever on how it works. The ID only exists in order to make it easier for yourself to categorize what the heck you're doing. It's just a name you write on top. So the second line, and that is the most important one actually, is the regex line. This one. What regex does, it looks at your ACT combat log. So if you go into this encounter here, for example, this one, right click and view logs. This is the combat log. Everything that happened in combat is inside of here. Every single line. For example, you use cascade, striking dummy takes damage, power eternal attack on striking dummy for a certain amount of damage and whatever. Then you hit the striking dummy for this much damage, and so on and so on and so on. So a glorious mess of everything you want. And what you can do is you will know that, for example, the boss uses a mechanic called, let's just say the boss used a mechanic called cascade. And you go into here, this is a search tab, and you type in cascade, like this. Press enter, and we'll say, okay, I found 2 results of what you're looking for. 2 lines in the entire log contain this word. Okay, I click OK. Then I click on only show search results. So these 2 lines in the entire combat log contain cascade. And what you want to do is we are working on technical step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combat. I'm going to start a combat encounter. ACT knows it. ACT is listening. Now I use the technical step. Like this. It's used. Now I end this raid encounter. It's happened. It's in the past. I go back to ACT. I now select the latest combat that happened that has the mechanic that I want. Right click, view logs, and the one we are interested in is the technical step. So what I'm gonna type in is technical. Then I'm gonna search as text. 13 results. Okay, so only show search results. So there's a lot of lines in here. I press on technical step, I gain the effect of technical step, I use technical step, you gain the effect, lose the effect, I deal damage 4 times, you lose the effect, blah 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 blah, and so on and so on. We are interested in one specific line. In almost all cases, in roughly 90% of all cases, what you're looking for is a line that contains the word use. And the reason why is use is usually a keyword that is used for a mechanic that has now happened. It has been done. And almost everything has it. There are exceptions, like in the Kafka fight, the tower in the background never does a use, even though it does mechanics. So there you have to do some special things. But in almost all cases, the boss has a line with use. So this is the line where you're looking for. Someone used something. So the line we have here is you use quadruple technical finish. That's the line we want. When this line happens, then it had the skill has been triggered. So what we do is we click on it, so it's highlighted in blue. Then we press copy selection, close it, go back to our file. I believe it was this one. Yes. So we need to teach this trigger to activate when it sees this use sentence. So inside of this trigger, inside of these two not dashes, what are they called? These two lines or whatever. We paste this into here. So this line contains the time that it happened at, some code, some ID we don't need, so we remove that. So what we see here now is Regex, you use quadruple technical finish. Every single time this line happens, this trigger activates. It sees this line, it activates. So we can remove this before seconds. No one cares about that. This info text here, different languages, we don't need it. All we need is for an info text to say, you have just now used technical finish. Can remove the stereo extreme. This is wrong. So this is all it is. So now we have created a file which has this trigger here. So we're gonna save it. And now what we do is we reload the overlay, the Raidboss overlay right here. Press reload. Check that there's no errors down here. Then we go back, start an encounter, and then we use this ability. And it hasn't triggered. Right, I forgot a step. That's why it hasn't triggered. Of course, yeah, I forgot a step. And the step was, what we need to do is, there is a file. So these are all the trigger files. So you take the name, the entire name, that includes the .gs, of the file you've just created. You go into data, that is one folder up in the hierarchy, and there's a manifest file, manifest.txt. And you need to register it in there. So you open it, you go to the very bottom, and you say, there's a new trigger in the triggers folder. It's called this. This is what it then looks like. You save the file like this. So this is the new line I've just made. And this file contains all files that Raidboss is supposed to pay attention to. So for example, you create a file that you don't want Raidboss to load, so you just don't enter it here. So for example, you have a file that is a work in progress, so you just leave it as is, and you don't enter it here. So I save it, go back to ACT, press reload, error parsing JSON. Okay, so there's a bug in here. Let's see what it is. Let me take it. No. No. And put it into here. Let's see what the error is. Don't want this in there. These are closed. Yup. That looks completely fine. Let me guess. This will be important for you as well. You will also do mistakes like these. So this is why I'm keeping this in the video. So you see, if you do a mistake like this, what you can do is you can check out other scripts that already exist and compare them in order to find what you did wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a file called testing.gs that I created and just compare them. I need to find the bug. I think it looks just fine, doesn't it? Does it have to have anything in here? Wait, at first I'm gonna... Actually, yeah, there is some kind of bug in here. So probably what this is that Notepad is just a bad program to do this. So I would use Notepad++ for this. It is specifically a program made for developers to write code in. So let's try it like this instead. I called this, what did I call it, the file? Test video guide. Close this, save, yes. So basically what I did is I removed a symbol that was invisible in Notepad. So now I'm gonna go back to here and reload the overlay. Still, mistake's still there. Okay. Oh, see, this is why Notepad is so good. This is why Notepad is so good. It highlights things when they shouldn't be there. So what happened is, when you have a regular expression, the text that it tries to match is in between those two slash lines. However, if there's nothing in between those two slash lines, it becomes has a completely different meaning. It becomes an exception line. So everything to the right of these two slash lines is completely ignored. So what happened here is the zone regex points to nothing because it doesn't know what this is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just write a dot in here, save it, and then try again. And now it worked. So that was indeed the problem. Always have something in there. So the reason I wrote a dot is because in the regular expression language, a dot means any symbol. And if you actually want to match a real dot, what you have to do is you have to write let me demonstrate it. You have to write a backslash like this. A backslash means ignore what the meaning should have and just look at the symbol. And if you want to actually match a backslash, then you just write two of them here, right? So just a dot means any symbol. So if there's any symbol whatsoever inside of the name of the area, then this will activate. So I'm gonna save it, gonna reload it, and now it doesn't have any more error messages for me. So now let's go back to the striking dummy. We're fighting it. I'm activating the buff. And there it is. So we've now created a trigger. When you use this ability, then this trigger will happen. Now I can do more things. For example, I don't want this to trigger only when I use it. I want this to trigger when anyone uses it. So how do I do that? I need to create a regular expression that understands both you use quadruple technical finish and anyone else uses quadruple technical finish. How do I do that? Do it like this. If I just remove this part and it says, come on, why isn't this, hello? Oh, this program just crashed for some reason. Hello? Technical difficulties? Notepad? What happened to you? Come on. Okay, now it works. So, if you remove the you use, what's left is quadruple technical finish. Now that is not good enough because there's a lot of lines in the combat log that have just quadruple technical finish and it will match to all of them. Let me demonstrate. If I save this as it is and then I go into combat and I use it again, don't forget to reload the overlay. Restart. I'm in combat. Use the buff. Look what happens. Yeah, that happened a lot of times. And the reason it happened a lot of times is hidden in the combat log, because that's all that matters. Come on, end the encounter, please. There we go. View logs. And now what we are matching to is quadruple technical finish. Search as text. 5 results. Only show search results. The trigger activated 5 times to every single one of those lines. That's weird. How do we make it not do that? Well, somehow we need to find a way for it to only activate quadruple technical finish when someone uses it. How do we do that? Here's how. As I already mentioned, regular expression is an entire language, and it has a couple options that are interesting to us. The most important one is the ability to say this or this. Let me demonstrate. So what we do here is the real brackets like this. So this is what they look like, just normal brackets. And here you write use and then a straight line or uses. So now what it says is use or uses and then space and quadruple technical finish and so on. So let us try again. If we do this and we go to ACT, we reload the overlay. No mistakes, done, good. We start a new encounter. We use the ability. It only triggers once. That means it did find the regular expression in the combat log exactly once, so it works. Now, why would I do it like this? The reason I do it like this is because use happens when you use an attack, in this case me. When I use something, the user itself, the player, then in the combat log it will say you use quadruple technical finish. However, if it's a party member who does it, it will say the party member's name and then uses quadruple technical finish. And this is why we want it to be like this. So now this line would match both to you and anyone in the combat log. So this is what we want. Now there are a lot of funny things we can do. For example, what you can do is you can say, I know that before this happens, before this happens, over here is always the name of the person who activated it. And we can take the name, save it, and then use it later. For example, we can put it into the text. So this is how Cactbot, for example, says a mechanic is being used on a specific player. Because we can catch the name in here in the regular expression, save it, and then put it into the text later. And this is a very specific detail, and maybe I will show it later. But first, we are not done yet with the basics. So let's continue with the basics. So what we have here is quadruple technical finish. Now triggers exactly once when it is used, and it doesn't matter who it is used by. Great. So now we need to decide what actually happens when it does trigger. So what you see here is an info text. What an info text is the green text you see on the screen and the default sound for info texts. There are 3 different texts that you saw. Let me show you them again. If I unlock the overlay, you see this thing here, the alarm text, alert text, and info text. These 3 are the ones that exist. For example, info texts contain usually something like Titania EX, Lightning Tether 1, Lightning Tether 2, Lightning Tether 3. These are all in green. Then in yellow, usually it is something like Titania X, Brambles happened, run. Run now. Brambles have happened, run now. And then alarm text is something like O9, Omega 9, Chaos Fight, Orb Mechanic. The tank is supposed to grab the orb or someone dies. And this is an alarm text. It's a huge red text in the middle of your screen if you're a tank. This is also something you can do. You can filter by your own personal role. So you can say, if I'm a tank, then trigger. If I'm not a tank, don't trigger. You can also do that. But first, I want to just go into the default settings that will actually be enough in like a good 90-95% of all cases. It would just look like this. So let me lock it again. So there's the info text. There's the alert text. This is what it would look like. And then there's the alarm text. Like this. And then it will say dancer buff now. For example. So what I'm gonna do is not to test it, just reload the overlay and go back into combat. Okay, the fight is started. Activate the buff. This is what it will look like. Boom. And you can program a bunch of things this way. This will be enough in most cases. For example, the boss has done a mechanic. Please do an alert text brambles, or alert text this mechanic or something. In most examples, this is enough. This is all you need. Now, let's just say you want a second trigger in this file. So what you're gonna do is gonna take this here, copy it, and paste it again. And now we have suddenly 2 triggers. And this we're gonna call it, for example, what else? What other abilities does Dancer have that are interesting to us? What's the ability called here? Curing Volts. Sure, why not? Call it Curing Volts. And the regular expression we're gonna do is use or uses Curing Volts. Like this. And then we're gonna do alert text. And we'll say Curing Volts used. Like this. So all we now have to do is to reload the overlay, go back into the game. I am in combat now, and then I'm press Curing Volts. Boom! That's exactly what we wanted. So, you know the basics for a good 90-95% of all mechanics you will ever use them on. Now, what other options do I have? Here are the options I have. Let's open the README again. So what do we have in here? We do have, this is the AD, I showed you what it does. Regex, I've showed you what it does. Now the first thing is the delay seconds that he shows off. What delay seconds does is the trigger has found a line that it activates to, and then before it actually does its alert text or whatever, it delays it by a certain number of seconds. So for example, what happens in Titania EX is the Brambles mechanic happens, but you're not supposed to run yet. You're supposed to run only a couple seconds later when the Brambles have actually connected. So what the developer of this Raidboss module did, he delayed the trigger by 3 seconds, and only then the alert text fires that screams at you to run. So let me demonstrate how to insert it. So you go to curing walls, for example, and then after regex, in here, you write delay seconds. And I want to delay it by exactly 2 seconds. Okay. Then I'm going to reload the overlay, go back into combat like this, and then press. 2 seconds delay. Great, that works. What else is there? What other options do we have? Suppress seconds. What this does is, when something happens often, for example, there's a mechanic that happens 3 times in a single second. For example, it is used on 3 different players or something, and all you want to do is you want to know when it happens once. That's enough for you. When's this relevant? Okay, just as an example, there is a mechanic in the Balsa's Wall dungeon on the first boss. What he does is he casts spray on the 2 DPS, and then he fires rockets at those people. And all you want to know is that he fired rockets and not who he fired it at. So if you just say, look, regex rocket or regex spray, then it triggers twice because he fires two different times. That's not what you want. You want it to only fire once, and you already know 2 people are going to get hit. So what you do is you suppress seconds 1, and it cannot trigger again for a full second after it has already triggered. That way you can remove the clutter of something triggering 5 times at once. So for example, you could take quadruple tactical finish, the one we looked at, and say suppress seconds 1 or something. It would work the exact same way as what we made with the regex. But the regex solution is more elegant. But suppress seconds also works. So let's move on. The duration seconds. You can modify how long this trigger is visible on screen. So usually the default is like 3 seconds or something. And you can say, look, I don't want it to be visible for 3 seconds. I want it to be visible for 10 seconds. I want it to stay on screen for 10 seconds. Okay. We saved this. Go to reload overlay. We go into combat again. And then we press curing walls. 1, 2. There it is. And then it stays on screen for 10 seconds. So this is how that works. It stays there and stays there until 10 seconds are over. Good. Moving on. What other mechanics are there? Info text, I showed you. Alert text, alarm text, I showed you that. Now this is interesting. This is how you, instead of firing the default sounds, you can make your own. For example, you can record yourself saying, for example, get in or get out. Now speaking, for example, for the Titania EX, she does a mechanic where you have to a split second to decide whether you need to get in or you need to get out of her proximity. And you can, instead of just having a text on screen say that, you can also make it just an audio cue for it. So you basically let the info text just empty, and instead just write a sound that you want it to have. You record it, you place the clip somewhere in your ACT folder, and then you write a what's it called? An address to it. So let me demonstrate how that works. Take this, and then I say I open Audacity. This is how I record sounds usually. And then I say test. Okay, it doesn't work because I have the wrong thing selected. Was it MME? Test? Test? Okay, there it is. So what we're interested in is just into this. Let's go. Test. There it is. So what we do now is we save it as a WAV file. We save it in my ACT folder. For example, right here, because who cares? And we will call it test. We save. Okay. There we go. No. So if we go now to your ACT folder. Where is it? There it is. There's the sound file. And if I play it, test, test, there it is. So what we do now is we click on this, and this is what it looks like. This is the address. This is not a very elegant way to get the address though. It's much better to work from your working directory. Basically, you know the location of the script, and by script I mean the .html file, and from there navigate to this. How do we do this? We do it like this. We go to here. We now have a sound. So where do we go? 2 dots means one hierarchy up. So we are currently in overlay plugin, Cactbot UI, Raidboss. Here we are in this folder. So we need to leave this folder once, twice. So what happens now is we are in UI, we are in Cactbot. Now we're in overlay plugin. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Now we are in the advanced combat tracker folder. So what we do now is we say test.wave. So this is the sound, and we remove the other text. So let's test it now. Reload overlay. We re-enter combat. Didn't work. Test. Oh, it did work. Whoops. I forgot I had delay on. Whoops. Right. Delay seconds too. Whoops. My bad. Right. Can remove the duration seconds. So now only sound played. So if what you want to happen is battle litany has been used and you want a sound clip to play, then this is how you do it. But if you also want text to show on the screen at the same time, this is how you do it. And then you can also say, this is usually too loud. In this particular case, I want it to be quieter. So what you can do is you can go to here and say sound volume. And 1 means 100%. But I don't want it to be 100%. I want it to be smaller. I want it to be half of what it usually is. So now it's at 50% volume of its original. This is how you edit the sound volume. So now it will be quieter. What other options do we have? Now we have condition functions, pre-run, run, and we can disable it. So what do these things mean? These sound complicated. They are. They enable you to do all these crazy things. As an example, in a small percentage of cases, the mechanics you're doing are complicated and you actually need to count something or to keep information for later. Or you need, for example, to catch someone's name and to keep it for later, or count something, or look where dragons are coming from during the nail phase in UCAP. And you can do it by using these. However, what I just showed you will cover more than 90% of your needs. And I think that this will be enough. If you want to learn any more, I would advise you to either ask in the comments and I will find you a more complicated and detailed guide somewhere online, because this video is already getting insanely long. And all I wanted to demonstrate is how to make the most basic of triggers for yourself, so that in most cases your needs are met. So if you have any questions to what you have learned, just ask me in the comment section below, and hopefully I will answer you quickly. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.